kill the supermarket just to put a sign showing which was the bagging area and which was the place to put your basket. But there are all sorts of other ways in which it seems I end up taking on work on behalf of big corporations, then getting told it's more convenient for me, even while those still employed by the big corporation find themselves ever more squeezed. Often this supposed convenience will be expressed in the language of choice. I can call the customer service line 24/7. I can cancel my subscription at any time. I can collect my tickets whenever I like. But much of the time, I'm still having to do more and mentally keep track of more than in the old, supposedly less convenient days.
So many tasks that used to be someone's salaried job have been offloaded onto the consumer's shoulders.
Craig Lambert is the author of Shadow Work, the unpaid, unseen jobs that fill your day.
Shadow work is this work that's in the shadows in the corners of our lives, but nonetheless it's very real. Over the last few years, technology and other things like business incentives have enabled businesses and organizations and schools and hospitals and governments to create shadow work for the customer or citizen that never existed before. We have our days now cluttered up with all kinds of mini tasks that are uncompensated, but we used to have someone else do them for us.
And the reason behind all this, of course, is usually just that it's more cost-effective for the company involved. And maybe that's fine, but let's not pretend it's some great charitable act to make my life more convenient. The ability to interact with my bank from the comfort of my own home is of dubious worth if it means waiting on hold for hours because the bank employs far fewer people than it once did.
Personnel is one of the biggest costs in most any business.
As Craig Lambert found in his research, there's been an almost unnoticed psychological adjustment where it just seems appropriate that you should be the one doing the work, comparing the flight options, tracking down the user manual online, instead of getting help from an actual paid expert. You see this happening right now with artificial intelligence. Maybe one day soon AI will take all our jobs. But in the meantime, the addition of supposedly intelligent chatbots for the customer experience rarely results in better service. It just acts as a barrier to stop you using up the time of those humans the company still employs. Not that any of this began with digital technology.
Self-assembly furniture, which I guess the most famous chain operates is IKEA, is a thing where the consumer has become part of the production process of actually making the object that they bought. And there is a joke that couples often get in arguments as they're trying to put these things together, which aren't always as easy as you think, that IKEA is actually a Swedish word that means argument.
We talk a lot about automation replacing jobs. First the least skilled ones and now the more skilled. But something else has been going on at the same time. We as consumers have been taking on that work. So-called convenience culture has been training us.
That's right, we're untrained. One of the earliest kinds of shadow work was pumping your own petrol, your own gasoline in your car. Well, that's because it was a job that required basically no training. And that means a consumer can come in there, raw and unschooled, and do it right away. And this is true of a lot of jobs like that. And that's why the job market is changing as a result, because things that don't really require a certain amount of specialized training or that can't be reduced to an algorithm are getting either eliminated or downgraded in their importance.
So just to get this straight, convenience is meant to save time and free it up for things we value more. But we've ended up in a situation where we often spend more time doing things we'd rather not do, and that we're not very good at. By the way, even when you do end up doing certain tasks more efficiently than before, you generally don't free up time as a result. Instead, in a version of Parkinson's law, the work expands to fill your expanded capacity. The better you get at answering emails rapidly, the more emails you receive, because you reply to people and they reply to your replies, and because you get a reputation for being responsive on email. And there's fascinating research to show that when so-called labor-saving devices like washing machines and vacuum cleaners were first introduced, the housewives who used them didn't save any time at all, because societal expectations of cleanliness just rose to offset the benefits. Now you could keep your family's clothes spotlessly clean, it began to feel like you had to. Meanwhile, there's another hidden factor of the convenience revolution, which is how easy it becomes to collect data on us, the customers. Craig Lambert noticed this with parking kiosks in the US.
They're getting our time and they're saving money, but it's also the things like parking kiosks for your car. There used to be a parking meter. You would park there, you take out a couple of coins, pop them in, and you're all set. You walk away and do your business. Now there are these kiosks, which mean walking 2 or 3 minutes down to an automated device and filling in the time, the license plate number, and your credit card, maybe. But so much of this is not about the money you spend; it's about getting your information. And frequently, that means your email address, which all corporations love to have, because those addresses then become a marketing device that they can use from now on. And that's one reason our inboxes fill up so much every day from corporate or institutional entities.
People know where you are at all times, what you bought at all times.
Jonathan Rowson is chief executive of Perspectiva, a research organization working on the relations between systems, souls, and societies.
There's a kind of ethical, moral side to this, right? If this is convenience, and this does save them money, and it does give them free data, which we know has a cash value for them, which is a kind of surveillance society that we're slowly sleepwalking into, I feel it's a step in the wrong direction. It's a dehumanizing, deculturing step.
This isn't a matter of conspiracy theory. It's not that our increasingly frictionless society is all some kind of plot. It's just that when you take the normal human desire to avoid discomfort, add the profit motive, and then more and more high-tech ways to reduce inefficiencies in the flow of information, so-called surveillance capitalism is what you get.
You don't really need bad actors. You don't need puppeteers or evil Wizards of Oz behind the curtain. All you need is a system that's driven in the pursuit of profit, in which, in order to maximize profit, you need to sell convenience and extract data. And that's what's happening at a colossal scale now.
A big part of the problem here is that we seem deeply convinced as humans that more choice, more options, more room for maneuver is always the path to more meaning in life. So we hurry to embrace new friction-reducing products, carelessly shedding our data to the four winds as we go. But that kind of choice can be a seriously mixed blessing. Julian Magini again.
We're led to believe that having a lot of choice is extremely convenient for us because we can get exactly what we want, and that's obviously much better than having to settle for something inferior. But first of all, there's this thing known as the paradox of choice, which was labelled by the psychologist Barry Schwartz. And his point is that actually, if we have just too much choice, it becomes overwhelming. You know, how on earth do you choose between 24 brands of soap powder? It can actually be easier to have fewer choices. So a lot of choice is actually deeply inconvenient.
Perhaps we need to make a different kind of choice. Not allowing ourselves to be lulled by the fake freedom of endlessly multiplying options, but exerting agency and authority in our own lives. That's the feeling you get when you push through the discomfort to interact face to face with a human, or to cook a nice meal from scratch. By contrast, convenience often seems to leave us more passive. You submit the order and then wait, or stand there like an idiot while the self-checkout machine tells you off. It's like you're not really in charge of your life anymore. There's something grimly amusing about the word they use to describe the systems that take your order, then ship you things from a distant warehouse, a process that never involves a single interaction with another human being. They call it fulfillment. In the next program, we'll explore the deeper spiritual and psychological implications of convenience.
and Inconvenient Truth, written and presented by Oliver Berkman and produced in Scotland by Amanda Hargreaves. On Women's Hour next, a listener will be sharing her experience of being diagnosed with terminal cancer and the impact it's having on her family. Nuala McGovern will be here after the news.
Six Music.
BBC Radio 6 Music is loud and proud.
Celebrating our queer authenticity around the globe.
A season of shows holding up inspirational LGBTQ+ voices throughout Pride Month, with special shows, uplifting mixes and playlists from artists, DJs and icons from the LGBTQ+ community that 6 Music loves.
If your best life is just be free.
6 Music's loud and proud. Everyone is welcome. Listen now. Search Loud and Proud on BBC Sounds.
BBC News at 10 o'clock. Nigel Farage is preparing to launch Reform UK's election manifesto, which the party is calling a contract with voters. He says the party wants to act as the voice of opposition. The party says its promises to freeze non-essential immigration and cut taxes would be funded by scrapping net zero targets, reducing government waste and cutting the welfare bill. Labour is campaigning on its promise to set up a national wealth fund to create 650,000 jobs over the next 5 years. The party says the plan will help revive the UK's industrial heartlands. Labour's Shadow Minister General Jonathan Ashworth explained the plans.
There are great opportunities in the economy of the future if we're prepared to put the investment in there. Great opportunities in clean steel, for example, which will benefit from Carnival, Tulpa, Rock and Sheffield. Great opportunities for us to be a world leader in electric vehicle manufacture or wind turbine manufacture. Unless we invest now, we will fall behind other nations across the world.
The Defence Secretary Grant Shapps has acknowledged that a Conservative general election victory is unlikely, but that the party's campaign is focused on saving as many seats as possible. He said the Conservatives are the underdogs and that he understands frustration with his party, which frequently voters to reform UK. Witnesses have told BBC that the Britain Coast Guard caused the deaths of dozens of migrants in the Mediterranean over a 3-year period, including 9 people deliberately thrown into the water. The Greek Coast Guard said it strongly rejected all accusations of illegal activities and insisted its staff had the utmost respect for human life. A study suggests more people around the world are turning away from news, describing it as relentless. According to researchers from Oxford University's Reuters Institute, 39% of those questions said they sometimes or often actively avoided the news, up 10 percentage points in 2017. And Ed Sheeran has been named as the most played artist of the year in the UK for the second time. The music licensing company PPL compiled a list of music across radio, TV and in public places in 2023. BBC News. Now on Radio 4, it's time for Women's Hour with Nuala McGovern.
Hello and welcome to Women's Hour. I hope you had a good weekend. Well, in front of me here in the Women's Hour studio is the grand piano poised to be played as we have the singer Debbie Wildman in studio. She's going to perform as Judy Garland. A total treat coming up for your ears this Monday morning. Also today, when criminals threatened to release Patricia Franchese's stolen nude photos, she will be back The documentary, My Sextortion Diary, is the result, and it's a story of Patricia turning the tables when she found herself a victim of blackmail. We're going to hear what happened to her. But what about you, I'm wondering this morning? Has there been a time where you have taken control of a distressing, or maybe a simply rubbish situation to come out feeling empowered? Were you able to transform the balance of power? You can text the programme, that number is 84844 on social media. We're at BBC Women's Hour, or you can email us through our website. For WhatsApp, for a message or a voice note, that number is 03700 100 444. And we also have Women's Hour listener Charlotte with us. She got in touch as she wanted to share her story about getting a recent diagnosis of terminal cancer. Charlotte thought that maybe one of our Woman's Hour listeners may have gone through something similar, or perhaps you went through it with a loved one and maybe you can understand the challenges that she's up against right now. So I'm going to be speaking to Charlotte a little later this hour. Very much looking forward to that. But I want to begin with the Spanish filmmaker Patricia Franquesa. She has made a film about sextortion. So that's a type of online blackmail when hackers threaten to share sexual photos or videos or information unless you pay them. And she made this film because it happened to her. My Sextortion Diary is a record of how she felt after her laptop was stolen and online blackmailers threatened to make intimate photos that were stored on that computer public. Let me play you a little bit of the trailer for this film.
Hi, Patricia. Unfortunately, this is not a spammy mail. I have more than 300 emails ready to send. Please, don't make me do this. Let's negotiate.
Right, that was courtesy of Gadea Films, thanks to them. The film has just had its premiere at the Sheffield Documentary Festival, and Patricia used the film as a way to take back power and to examine the shame that some people feel about having intimate photos made public online. Patricia Franquesa joins me now. Thank you for being with us this morning. And I'm sorry, is it Patricia or Patricia? Which do you prefer?
Well, it's Patricia, but it's like in English it would be like Patricia. Like, but actually my friends are calling me like Patty.
Patty, okay. Is it okay if I call you Patty?
Please.
Well, welcome to Woman's Hour. I've just seen some clips of it this morning, and I have to say it is the most intriguing documentary. Let's go back to how it all happened. Your laptop was stolen at a film festival in Madrid. When did you realize that, in fact, it led to blackmail?
Actually, it was like 2 months after the death of the computer that in the moment, like, someone stealing your computer is a big mess because I had all my life in that computer, but I could have never imagined that someone will take this data and use it against me. So it was two months later, like on the 1st of August, when a friend is informing me that he received by email 3 very intimate pictures of myself by an anonymous sender. Then I remember that one week ago, I got like an email saying, "Hello Patricia, unfortunately this is not a spam email. I have hacked your computer and I found these 3 pictures that I am attaching. If you don't send me $2,400 in this Bitcoin account, I'm going to start mass mailing the pictures to all your work contacts." So when I got...
What went through your head at that point?
Well, in the moment I got the blackmail email, I thought it was a spam, so I kind of didn't put attention to the email. But then, when my friend is telling me he got pictures, then that email came back to me like, oh my god, that was a real threat. So actually, it took me a few seconds to understand I was being blackmailed, because in the moment it kind of changed my situation. Like, oh wow, I'm being blackmailed by someone I don't know who the computer was stolen. So took me a few seconds to understand the new situation I was in, that actually I had someone that wanted my money and had my whole computer. He used the 3 pictures, but he had the whole computer, like all my data.
All your data, wow. What did you decide to do?
In the moment, like, actually I was like, I had like few more seconds of doubting, like, what should I do? You know, should I reply to this email? But then actually I felt a really responsible citizen and I directly called the police because I needed help. I was being blackmailed, so I called the police. So I started like all the police journey through the blackmail. That it was not really helping me, actually.
And what wasn't helping you, that actual journey through the police?
Sorry?
What was not helping you? What was difficult?
The police didn't really take it seriously. Like, they told me like it was that that the pictures will be leaked. Like, they didn't protect me, the police. Actually, it was like they didn't take it seriously, and they were actually sexualizing me more. Like, they were saying like, oh, this happens to young women like you, and I was like, okay. And at some point they were telling me like, no, don't worry, we're not going to look at the pictures, like they repeated this like 3 times, and at some point I said like if it's making your work better, like please, like what's the picture? So the police made this shame stronger, and actually making the documentary helped me to put like more power into myself. And I was saying all the time, like I'm doing a documentary, so I could protect myself a bit, saying that I was a public figure. But I was realizing, like, imagine if you are like younger and then you have this tool of documentary, the police is actually kind of sexualizing you more and being more embarrassed.
I understand, and that was your feeling, and I don't have a response, obviously, from the police that you specifically spoke to, but you decided, you are a filmmaker, you decided to make a documentary about this, and a lot of it is filmed on your phone as well, so it's kind of, I suppose, putting that technology back into your hands and trying to create something else. Talk me through what you managed to do there.
Yeah, once I understood this, the film is about how I'm understanding what is happening to me. So when I the 2nd of August, the day after the blackmail, I understood, I saw that was it was extortion, what it was extortion, and then I saw it was happening all over the world, and it was happening to many kind of people, most likely teenagers. They are the more vulnerable ones. So then I understood that I needed to do a documentary about it. I felt like this case happened to me because I needed to tell it about it. So actually, the documentary was helping me to have a sense into my blackmail. I was documenting everything, and the concept of the film is I was using all the data and all the devices the hacker could have access to. So it's like I felt spied, like it was 2 months. Even now I feel maybe the hacker is still, looking at me, searching. So it's about this idea that someone is spying on you, and he's waiting for you to do a mistake so he can attack you back.
There's so much to unpack here, because I feel the parts of the documentary that I watched, I felt I was watching you, if that makes sense, while you are making this documentary about possibly being watched by somebody else, this unknown person, which actually was a criminal gang, right?
We don't know, actually the end of the film is bittersweet, because at the end, my success is that we are here talking, that we finished the documentary, and the documentary helps other people in the same situation know what to do, or friends of people that is going through it, what to do, it's creating consciousness. Because when I was this victim of extortion, I had no information. It was 5 years ago. So at the end, making the film is like the antidote of the hacker, I'm making the hacker have less clients, but the hacker is still free. So it's leadership, because the bad one is still hacking other people. So at the end, the film is also bringing the audience in the side of the hacker. We are looking at someone suffering and being spied.
Yes, being spied on, because you also made what must have been a really difficult decision to upload some of those intimate photographs.
Yeah, actually, during the blackmail with my friend Moni, we were laughing, oh, the next thing will be to post the pictures yourself. I'm yes, of course. I'm oh, I don't want that. I was laughing, but I didn't really intend to do it, because I didn't want to show myself like this, it wasn't an image that I chose to share to the public. So at some point, after 2 months, the hacker is not stopping. So at some point, I see that my only way to go out of this blackmail is posting the pictures myself. Instead of him shaming me for the pictures, don't worry, I will post it. So I take over my privacy and I show it to myself, even though it was complicated. Actually, people, when I was telling my case and I said I posted the picture, people was so it's so easy, it's just post that. The film is about how artists will decide who is and who is influenced, because it's very easy to see these cases from outside, but when you are inside and you're the one who is suffering it takes much more words. And I was 29 years old, I was an adult, I had a profession, I had assistant support. My shame system is more aware, But I was thinking, like, if this would have happened to me when I will be 16 years old, I don't know what I would have done.
Yeah. I know reading you were crying while posting those intimate photographs because you said it was the right thing to do, but that didn't make it an easy thing to do. But you said the hacker remained aggressive, messaging you. What was it? Emails?
There were emails, like he was first of all, like, he asked me 2,400, then he told me to negotiate. Then, like, he was first targeting my work contacts. Like, he wanted to shame me on the work system. But imagine if I would have been a lawyer, that I would have just recently have been promoted. Imagine if this happened to you, like, maybe you pay because you don't want all your effort of work after like 6 years of working, then someone sending nudes to your boss, you know, like thanks God I was like in the documentary like atmosphere, so it wasn't. But imagine like being so they're targeting directly to your work, and then slowly he went to my family.
Oh my
so
goodness.
Actually, he sent the pictures to my father intentionally, so he was slowly being hurt and touching the shame.
Do you know that it's a guy? You say he.
He's referring as a guy, but with money. Like we were always saying, like, it could be a she, you know. Like I want this thing to be user versus user, and actually the how I'm representing the hacker, it has the voice of the internet. I don't
Like
have a jet.
A robotic voice that we heard at the beginning there in that little clip.
Exactly, it doesn't have a gender, it doesn't have an age. Like I love this user versus user. Like, you know, so it's actually more invisible and more like, it's more sharp.
Could I turn to what actually happened? Because my understanding is the police considered your case resolved because the person or people who stole the laptop were caught.
Yeah.
That did happen.
It did happen after 5 years.
Yeah, right.
Actually, the justice worked, but super slowly. But at the end, I got the guy who stole my computer. So now we are reopening the case of sextortion because he knows what he did with the computer, and it's not about my personal case. Like, my computer is already lost and the data was lost, so they can blackmail me again because the hacker is still online. But it's understanding what they do with the stolen devices, because here there's a huge business. When they steal your laptop or your phone, it's not about the cost of the device, it's the what they do with the data. So actually I live in Barcelona, and they steal a lot of phones, and the thing is, like, it's not about the phone, it's like, oh my god, what I had inside. It's not just about the picture, but also emails, like text, you know, what you can be vulnerable of, that you will pay, you know, to a hacker.
It's not the hardware, it's everything that's inside it. I'm also wondering, because you said you're older, you've gone through this now. What advice would you give to somebody who's going through this? Because it is a global issue. We've spoken about it many times here on Woman's Hour, but your story grabbed us because it's so unique in that way of trying to turn the tables.
I will tell them to know that they didn't do anything wrong, so that they will kind of put the shame away, and that they will be active in their own case. Like, ask for help, like surround yourself with support. Like, it can be your parents, it can be your friends, knowing that your support system will not shame you, you know, they will help you to move forward. Actually, my friend Moni, like, was the one who, because when you're in pain, it's harder to find perspective into things. So having a support system, they will hug you, but they will say, okay, let's go to the police. So like asking for support and going to the legal system, because they need to know that this is happening more and more, so the police also have more cases to study and to find a way to protect the users of their own countries.
So interesting. Thank you for spending some time with us this morning, Patrizia Franchese, and she had her UK premiere at the Sheffield Documentary Festival. And just to let you know again, it's called My Sextortion Diary. The little parts of it I saw, I found it so intriguing. Best of luck, Patrizia. Thank you so much for coming on to Woman's Hour.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
And if you want to get in touch on that or any of the other stories that we are covering this morning, 84844 is one way to get in touch. Now, I am looking for you to get in touch with the next thing I want to tell you about, because on Women's Hour tomorrow, we have a special extended 90-minute programme where I'll be speaking to senior women from the main political parties as we host the Women's Hour election debate. And we want you to get involved by telling us about the issues that you care most about. Is it access to affordable childcare? Is it an overhaul of maternity provision, or maybe commitment to climate change policies? What are your priorities for future government policy? Maybe there's some issues you think are being ignored in the party manifestos or contract, as Reform UK has called theirs today. And do the parties listen enough to women's voices? Let us know the issues that will influence how you vote on the 4th of July, and we'll ask the politicians. To get in touch with your questions, you can text Women's Hour on 84844. Text are charged at your standard message rate. On social media, it's at BBC Women's Hour, or email us through our website. And we'd really love this. Why not send a voice note? WhatsApp number is 03700 100 444. I'll give those numbers again before the end of the hour. But I want to turn next to a Women's Hour listener, Charlotte. And Charlotte got in touch with us as she wanted to share her story with you. She said when she got in touch with us that I'm sure there are many listeners out there that would relate to my story. I may be able to help them, and there may be people out there who listen that might be able to help me. Because Charlotte was diagnosed with terminal cancer in April and was told she might only have a few months to live. I'll be joined shortly by Adrian Bettley from Macmillan Cancer Support. But I want to begin first with Charlotte and welcome you to Women's Hour. And also just say, I'm so sorry you received that diagnosis.
Oh, thank you. It's not an easy diagnosis to take.
No, you know, the first thing, I'm looking at you on a screen, Charlotte, and this is the first time we've met, but what I'm first struck by is that you're so young, which I think I should tell our listeners as well. Let me turn to the diagnosis when you originally went to your GP. It was with a long-term blocked nose?
Well, in January I had a blocked nose and it wouldn't go away, and I debated whether to not, because it's just a blocked nose, but I did go to the GP. I was sent away. I went back again, sent away. And then the third time I went, by this point I was also experiencing painful sensations in the right side of my face. So it started off like tickling, but then it turned into burning, sort of icy hot kind of pain on the right side. And the doctor there was very thorough, but she diagnosed me with trigeminal neuralgia, which explained the pain I felt across the trigeminal nerve, but it didn't explain the blocked nose. So she referred me to ENT, but that would be a 20-week wait, so I'd still be waiting now. But I decided, because I was really sure that whatever was in my nose was causing the pain in my face. I didn't suspect cancer. I thought something was sitting on a nerve and causing it distress. But so I went private. We were really fortunate to be able to do that. And it was something that I didn't take lightly. So I asked my parents for help. They did help me. But I debated asking them for the longest, for like a week. I went back and forth. I felt guilty about going private because other people can't, and my partner wasn't keen on going private because we don't have a lot of money. But something in my gut told me to, and I had to do. So I did, and I met a wonderful consultant. He's been with me now, and he's passed me over to somebody else, but he was with me for all this time. He did a endoscopy, nasal endoscopy, saw that there was a polyp, he called it a polyp, in my nose, and then said, okay, we'll put you back on the NHS now, we'll go do an MRI, CT scan, get this sorted out. Now I was not concerned, I was just happy to be seen. I really thought, I think this is the beginning of the end. Yes, we got those scans done, but it was on the morning of the MRI that the nurse said to me very sweetly and casually, "So we're going to investigate your tumour." I was, excuse me, I never heard that tumour one, and that I just burst into tears. I was devastated. But then I reasoned with myself, and she reasoned with me that tumour just means growth. So it could be anything. So I've got tumour, polyp, perhaps my consultant was just being careful with his language and with me. So I went with the MRI, and then on the 4th of April, I think it was the 4th of April, I got the diagnosis that I had something called adenoid cystic carcinoma, which is quite a rare disease. Usually it occurs in the salivary glands, but mine is in my nasal cavity, and it's gone across the trigeminal nerve, which is the nerves in your face, into the cavernous sinus, which is a really crucial area. It's where a lot of nerves meet, and it's where the carotid artery is, so that supplies blood to the brain. And so it extended right across the face and around the base of the skull. And he told me then that the cure rate for this is in the single percentage figures.
My goodness, it's such a difficult thing to hear, and I understand that you had surgery a couple of weeks ago, but it was less successful than you hoped for this, and also that you're starting radiotherapy later today. But to try
Wednesday, it's been delayed.
It's been delayed, but you will be going ahead with that.
Mm-hmm.
But getting that diagnosis of terminal cancer, I don't know how you begin to process that, and I know you came to us here on Women's Hour to share that story of trying to process it, because others may also have gone through it with a loved one.
Yeah, so I'm divided because I realise that it is a possibility, and perhaps a likely possibility that it is terminal. Certainly without any treatment, I have months left to live. And I can feel it. The pain increases and my fatigue increases. I feel it growing. So it's not something that I can ignore, that possibility. But there is another part of me that thinks that there's still hope, and I'm still riding on that hope. So that there are drug trials out there. There are people, really clever scientists that can fix these sorts of things. There was a man who had the same disease that I have. He was cured. They told him he was a goner and he was cured. It turns out it's not exactly the same as mine. His cells were in a slightly different place, but still it hopes, and so rapidly. So half of me is rapidly, contacting consultants across the globe and seeing what options there are for me. And I have a great oncologist who's really on my side, and she's working really hard for me as well.
So you are still hopeful, and I can see a smile come to your face with that as well.
I think I have to be, because I think I just have to be hopeful, and that's why partly why I came on here, because I hope people listen and go, I know who you can contact you, because I'm sort of blind with this.
Yeah, well, it's all come so suddenly. I mean, April feels like it was just a couple of moments ago, to be quite honest. But I know you do have family, you do have a 4-year-old daughter as well.
Yeah.
I was immediately thinking of her and whether you've spoken to her about your diagnosis.
So she knows that. So she's 4, I think you said that. She knows that there is a growth. There's something growing in Mum's face that's making Mummy get hurt. And so the doctors are trying to remove that pain, trying to get that thing, because it shouldn't be growing there, trying to get it out, and then Mummy will feel better again. That's her understanding of it so far. But I have been very much thinking and trying to find the right time and the right words to tell her that Mummy might die. And that is a really difficult thing to have to say to her, but I think it's really important that I do. I think it has to come from me, and she has to be really clear that it's not her fault. Because I think 4-year-olds can sort of blame themselves for everything, can't they? Think it's all about them. So I don't want her to think that it's because I didn't love her enough, or something like that.
How difficult.
So I would be. I think the language I would try and use is, I haven't done it yet, and I want to do it at the weekend because I want her to be around all day. If she has questions, I want to pass her over to another caregiver and let her worry. So it's finding the right time and the right balance for it, but just letting her know that when I'm gone, that I'm not coming back. I think that needs to be clear. I'm also scared that she will be very fearful for the rest of her life that something like that could happen to her, and I don't want her to carry that. I want her to just live life. I think it's too much too soon for her.
She's so little, of course. Well, Charlotte, why don't we bring in Adrian Beckley, who's from Macmillan Cancer Support. Adrian, you've been hearing some of Charlotte's story there. So feel for you, Charlotte, and thank you for sharing that. But telling family members must be one of the huge challenges, along with, of course, the medical aspects of the terminal diagnosis.
Yeah, and I just want to say a huge thank you, Charlotte, for sharing your story. That's so brave of you to come on air, but it's so important because people don't talk about these really difficult, challenging issues, do they? And I think there will be people out there who are listening and who are going through similar experiences, or as we've said before, may have been through similar. And I think it is really, really difficult, and particularly for your child, as you say, that's such a complex situation to be in. And I guess there's certain things that I can recommend to think about, to maybe give some advice, but ultimately I would say please do reach out for help to anybody who's out there listening, or you yourself, Charlotte. So
what is it though, Adrian, that you would recommend? You've heard what's going through her head, these worries of making her daughter fearful, or that she did something wrong. That's a child. Of course, people have other family members as well.
Yeah, and it's very dependent on the child's age, and as you said, she's so young, isn't she? So I think there is something about reaching out for support, perhaps phone the Lung Cancer support line, speak to one of our advisors. We have specialist nurses. There are other sources of support for you, I'm sure, out there. But really it is about, you've got to do what's right for you and what's right for the child, and you know your child best, don't you? But I guess it sounds like you're starting to make those plans, which is really important. It's about giving yourself time to prepare, think about what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, think about some of the questions that might come up. I think it's really important to think about the environment, where it's comfortable, what time of day, because children sometimes get really niggly at night time, and you don't want them going to bed feeling really distressed, do you? So, and I think it is about being open and honest, but using simple and clear language. And thinking about the relevant information.
Because Charlotte was mentioning there that she really wants it to be her that informs her child. Is that what you recommend?
I think that's entirely your choice, and you, as I say, you know yourself and you know your child best. It can be helpful to have other people there sometimes. So if you've got a specialist nurse, or particularly a specialist child care nurse who could come and see you at home and support you through that, or if you've got, you mentioned about your partner. So I don't know whether you might find it useful to have your partner there so that it's a shared experience and we're all kind of talking about it together. But I don't know what their understanding views or...
With her, I think it would be absolutely essential for her daddy to be there too, but I did read about including like a specialist nurse but I would worry that maybe Polly would blame them, being a stranger. And then she hears this bad news, maybe there'd be a connection then of, why are you killing my mum? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
There might be an odd connection that would be made you're new, this is new information, they must be related.
That could happen.
And then she might then mistrust doctors or professionals.
So it sounds like for you, it feels right for you to do that in your own time. I hope with Polly doesn't. But maybe if you wanted to reach out for some support before that and have a conversation with a specialist about how to go about it, what other sources of support there are. So there may be things like that you can follow up afterwards. So some sort of family therapy, some counselling, things like that could help Polly and help you and Daddy as well. And I think it's about not just one conversation. I think it's about going back and checking again and revisiting the conversation to check her understanding, to make sure that she's taken on board what it is that she needs to know.
Adrian Beckley is from Macmillan Cancer Support. Thank you so much for coming on, and also Charlotte for getting in touch. Charlotte, we will stay in touch. I wish you all the best in the coming week as well as you continue with your treatment, and also for getting in touch with Women's Hour and sharing your story with our listeners. It's a message coming in to you. I'm listening to the young woman talking about her terminal cancer diagnosis. My heart breaks as I have to do the same when my husband was given a terminal diagnosis. I'm also a cancer patient who was given a terminal diagnosis 9 years ago. I've been where she is right now twice over. Yes, keep up the hope and continue to advocate for treatment options, sending all my very best wishes and thoughts for her and her loved ones. And I do want to say that we also have links on our website, on the Women's Hour website, if you've been affected by any of the issues that we have been talking about. Some of you getting in touch about other items we've been speaking about this morning. There was one about feeling empowered, or about turning the tables. Here's a story. I was at a music festival a few years ago. Unfortunately, camped very nearby were a group of young people who partied noisily into the early hours. Rather than stay in bed and getting annoyed, I got up, pulled on some clothes, picked up a chair and went and joined them. I sat down with them saying, I can't sleep because of the noise you're making, so I'm joining your party. The result was they gradually left the party and a good night's sleep was had. So another on sextortion actually. It's from Kate in West Sussex. She says, my year 7 son has just had an assembly about sextortion, and we as parents had an email about the risks to our children. It's sad and frustrating to have these conversations with 12-year-olds. 84844 if you would like to get in touch on any of the items that we have been speaking about this morning. Also, I just want to remind you, tomorrow, special extended 90-minute programme, Women's Hour, election debate, any of the issues you would like them to be speaking about, 84844. But now, where I am, the sun is shining. This is a new thing after quite gloomy weather. So maybe it's time for this.
If he goes full in with the personal attacks on Keir Starmer, I think it will help him maybe win 1, 2, possibly even 3 extra seats than he would have had he not done that. But it will leave the Conservative Party in a much worse state in the next few years.
Yeah, that's a very good point. So the short. I don't know that I agree with you, but your analysis is that there might be some short-term electoral advantage in character assassination attempts, but the damage it does to the Tory brand would be generational. There's a bit of a dichotomy emerging here. So that either, and it depends, I suppose, on your view of the potential votes that are out there. Either he starts behaving decently, better late than never, and starts trying to distance himself from the nativist snarls and the fantasy figures, and actually starts behaving in a more gentlemanly fashion, or he goes the other way and does what you describe. I think there might be more votes in actually starting to behave with some decency and decorum.
Yeah, I think it is better for him just to stand up and own up to Conservative failure. Just stand up.
Yeah.
He can't completely go into the full details because that would be catastrophic as well, but to just say Boris Johnson was this, that, Liz Truss was this, that, and it will hurt.
You can do that with Truss, but he was Johnson's chancellor.
Because, yeah, absolutely. But I remember Rishi Sunak standing outside of Downing Street and saying integrity and accountability. Now, he can't save the months that he's been Prime Minister, but he can at least help himself in these 2 weeks, because what I'm afraid of is the continuing parentification of the party and Farage turning into a complete Trump-like figure. With Boris Johnson, we were lucky, because as horrible, as repugnant, as awful as he was, when he left, we didn't have massive protests. When he left, there wasn't as big of a cult-like following in the general public as there was with Donald Trump.
No, I mean, you're absolutely right. His personal approval ratings, whatever people like Nadine Dorries have managed to convince themselves of, his personal approval ratings were pretty dismal.
Sorry for interrupting you. The issue is Nigel Farage, I think, does have that. I've been looking through my social media, and I'm very left-wing person.
Better at it.
And I've still gotten Nigel Farage shorts, Nigel Farage TikTok. And the issue with that, and especially with the young voters, and the issue mentioned, I think
he may start cutting through, and we'll see more of a reflection of what's been happening with the far right in continental Europe. You were brilliant. I don't know what you, and I mean it. Don't ever apologise for having a speech impediment. But at least not to me. You can do obviously whatever you want in your life, but it's certainly not anything anyone ever needs to apologise for on this programme. And to be honest, if you hadn't told me, I never would have known. Thank you. I'm cracking on just to get more voices. Carl in Liverpool goes right in there. So the idea is that Sunak will go for the jugular by launching personal attacks on Starmer. This is a different sort of jugular altogether. And it ties in with what Ahmed was just saying. Apologise for the last 14 years, suggests Carl. Announce the scrapping of Rwanda, the reintroduction of two-child benefit, net zero targets, accept a two-state solution and recognition of Palestine, commit to the European Convention on Human Rights, and re-examine or re-enter the single market. Own it all, tell the public that there will be a return to the centre-right, and kick Sue Ellen, JRM, Gullis and their cronies out. I mean, Carl, unintentionally perhaps, shows us how cautious the Labour Party is at the moment, because they haven't done all, or possibly even any of the things that are on Carl's list of tactics that would announce a lurch back to the centre, a lurch back to the centre-right. 10:41 is the time. Are there any attack lines missing here? What would you go for? What does Keir Starmer have a jugular? Jeremy Corbyn, Brexit, and human rights work. Those are the three things where they think he's vulnerable. Maybe you've got better ideas. Tell me what they are. Joseph's in Stroud. Joseph, what would you like to say?
Damn you, Carl, you just shot my clock.
Is that what you were going to do? I'm sorry, I had no idea.
No, that's all right. I mean, effectively, that's it. So, like, you know, the kind of socially liberal, fiscally conservative, one nation Tory, South Central voters are now swing voters. Whereas previously they were locked down Tory, unless the Tories really pulled a spud from train spotting.
Sure.
You know, drank too much of the wine and did the classic spud. Don't want to get into the details, but we all have the image.
Yes.
Which they've done with Brexit. Really, it's all over the walls now. Nobody can deny it. You know.
So I mean, you're both. So you and Carl are both tacking round Labour. You're actually making an offer to those voters, and I think you're right to.
That would otherwise go Lib Dem.
Yeah.
So you know, Labour's going to. So because Labour's going for different voters in different places who want different things. You know, right now the fight's over the kind of those kind of socially liberal, fiscally conservative, voters in the southeast who would normally swing between the.
I guess that you need to then look at the calculus, don't you? Constituency by constituency, and decide where those numbers are actually achievable, which is where my slightly silly £10,000 game actually becomes more pertinent. So we need to identify the seats that we might actually still be able to win or retain, and then cut our cloth accordingly. So we're speaking in broad brushstrokes here about what the party could be doing. It may be that the areas where they are most close to retaining seats are areas where the opposite would work, where the nativist snarls might actually win people over. You wouldn't want to be Rishi Sunak for all the tea in China, would you? 10:43 is the time. Mike's in Charente in France. That's Spain and France featuring on the show today. I'm gratified by that. Mike, what would you like to say?
Yeah, hi. You were saying does Keir Starmer have a jugular? Probably not, but I think Nigel Farage does.
Do you?
I think he's got such a vile past.
Yeah.
That by focusing on that, you could actually let people have second thoughts about it.
I used to think that, and indeed, I did an interview with him 10 years ago, would you believe, where his vile past became very much front and centre. But here's the thing: you look at the story from earlier this week about almost 1 in 10 members of his candidates running in this election are friends with a fascist leader, with a bloke who sort of makes no... And it doesn't touch the sides. It doesn't touch the sides, Mike. And do you know why? This is the really grim bit that I think you've overlooked. Is the people who like him, as with Trump, don't care about all the disgusting stuff. Look at Trump.
Yeah, I think. But I tell you why, James. I think that there's a hell of a lot of people who sort of like look at reform and say, "Oh, they seem quite sensible," rather than going full on. Yeah, really.
They don't. They look at reform and they think they're as mad as me. I'm going to vote for them. They're as mad. They're as obsessed with the boats as I am. They're as obsessed with immigration as I am. That's why I'm going to vote for them. That's what they do.
Well, no, I think there's a sizable chunk of people who actually think, well, that's a quite good policy. That's quite a good policy, without knowing the background of these people. And actually, just for evidence, okay, it's an anecdote. But I'm on a football forum to my club.
Yeah, be careful. Remember the laws. Well, I'll push back if you say anything inappropriate.
No. We have a politics section.
Oh yeah.
And there was a couple of people saying, "Oh, I think I might well vote for reform." And I said, and I posted. All I did, I posted that Led by Donkey's video about Farage. I don't know if you've seen it.
I'm in it.
Oh, good. And a couple of other pieces, like the anecdotes about,
and that works, did it?
Scared out. He said, "Oh my word, I didn't realise."
That is quite interesting. That is quite interesting. There's if you need any more ammunition, there's a whole chapter in my book looking at all of those sort of episodes. And maybe I've been doing this too long. Maybe I'm too grizzled when I say it's not even that people don't care about all that disgusting stuff on his record. It's that they actively like it. Maybe Mike's experiences are actually more realistic because he's not completely bombarded every day with the people that have a sort of Trumpian approach to the track record and don't just not mind it, but claim to actively relish it. 10:46 is the time.
This week on LBC. I'm Keir Starmer and I'm looking forward to taking your calls. Join me, Rishi Sunak, as I take your calls on LBC.
My question for Rishi Sunak would be, what are you going to do about NHS waiting times?
What are you going to do about housing?
Your government has lost my trust, so what are you going to do to win it back?
As Britain decides, this is your chance to put your questions directly to our next Prime Minister. With me, Nick Ferrari, exclusively on LBC.
My question is for Keir Starmer. I'm struggling to pay my bills. What are you going to do to help me?
When are you going to turn the NHS around?
You said you're going to scrap Rwanda, but what are you going to do with the people already here?
Only LBC lets you question the next PM. All starts tomorrow morning from 7 with Keir Starmer on Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Listen on your radio and on Global Player. LBC.
This is what award-winning customer service sounds like from real Octopus Energy calls.
You've been brilliant. You've all been brilliant. There's nowhere in the world I would change my supplier. It's what electricity companies should do. Where did you hear that?
Octopus Energy. Outstanding service at fair prices.
Painting your lounge the perfect shade of off-white. Building a summer house for a delicious slice of serenity. Finally sorting your plumbing to stop that
frightful noise. It matters. And when it matters, it should be done splendidly. So type your postcode and what you need into trustatrader.com and find a trusted trader professional who cares about your project as much as you do. When it matters, trust a trader.
Serious about the right. 50 years experience and the only one to receive the Queen's Award for Innovation twice from Boots, Pharmacies and Vitabiotics.com. For #1 verification, see Vitabiotics.com. Big news! The Skoda Big Launch event is here from the 20th to the 24th of June and it's gonna be big. A big fanfare at the big unveiling of our new 2024 lineup. Big oohs and big ahs, with the all-new 7-seat Skoda Kodiaq that's big on space, and the all-new Skoda Superb that's big on luxury. Jump in at your local retailer for some big fun with a chance to win big prizes. A big family weekend away, British Grand Prix tickets, VIP Carfest day tickets, and more. The Skoda Big Launch event. UK 18 plus to enter, find and scan a hidden QR code and showroom and complete form between 20th and 24th of June. 1 entry per person, 5 winners drawn at random. See website for price details and T's and C's.
When you book with Premier Inn, you won't break the bank. So whether you're a racquetball team refueling in Rochdale, the Williams wedding guests in Wandsworth needing recovery brekkie, and the budding business owners meeting buyers in Birmingham,
I think we have a deal.
you'll get the same great value experience every time. Wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, do your thing and get great stays at great prices at PremierInn.com. Premier Inn, rest easy.
Oh, that'll be the running group shot. Colin splashed his 5k, and Gina's jogging up some mountain in Portugal, and I just bought a new couch. Oh, update, Gina's made it to the top, and she has a new blister. Surely selling all this is costing her a fortune.
Actually, Cam, it isn't. Here at Tesco Mobile, we've made sure she has no EU roaming fees this year.
Oh, sign me up.
It pays to be connected. Tesco Mobile, every little helps. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/home from home. Customer service matters. Octopus Energy, recommended by Which 7 years running. Octopus Energy, outstanding customer service at fair prices.
James O'Brien on LBC.
It is 10 to 11, and it is, as I expected, heading pretty conclusively towards the conclusion that there is nothing they can do. The sort of air of desperation has hung heavy over the Conservative Party, pretty much from the moment that Rishi Sunak decided, took everybody by surprise, including his own colleagues, by calling that election over. Do you know, our tongue was in our cheek, wasn't it, when we suggested right at the outset of this campaign that he'd done it just because he's had enough. We offered that up. There's two things that came up on the programme recently that were offered up slightly tongue-in-cheek. The first was that he's only called the election because he just wants to get out of there. And the second was that he came back from D-Day early because he didn't want to hang out with the foreign leaders. It was all a bit Brexity. And both of those things now, I think I'd probably say, have a 52-48% likelihood to them. I think both of those positions hold rather more water than we thought when we first shared them. Hey, what other reason can there be for him having gone so early? Anyway, I mention that because his polling is now, according to John Curtis at the University of Strathclyde, a good professor, it's the lowest that it has ever been. The Conservative support is at its lowest point in UK polling history. I'll say that again. Its lowest point in UK polling history. What on earth could they do to salvage some of those percentage points? Answer, we can't even agree. We've got polar opposite proposals in place. He could lurch further to the right, become more unpleasant, launch personal attacks on Keir Starmer and adopt more of the nativist stance that Nigel Farage and Suella Braverman deploy. Or he could pursue decent people and move away from those two positions, start perhaps telling the truth. It's extraordinary to think those are the opposing positions. So he must know that as well, depending on how cynical he is. What should I do? Shall I go after the racists or shall I go after the decent voters? I'm that desperate now, I might just toss a coin. A mad state of affairs. 10:53 is the time. Mark's in Croydon. Mark, what would you do?
Hi there. I mean, it's very similar to what people have said before, but and it's a bit Brewster's Millions, really. But you know,
that's a great film, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I just thought my stomach being here to watch it. Yeah, basically his whole film repertoire is worth a watch. But yeah, I mean, I think essentially, just being honest, he's obviously very uncomfortable with the situation they're in. You know, he's the first non-white prime minister we've had, and he's sitting in a party that is very, very close to the verge of reform and therefore the extreme right. So there's a phrase which is something along the lines of, what does it matter how you fall? If it's all that's left, how you fall really matters.
How you fall is everything. Well, this is on a personal level again. That's where the cause began. It's not necessarily going to deliver more votes, but it does something about the state of public discourse in his final week, 2.5 weeks, to actually try to tap back to a place where reality matters and decency is clear.
Pave the way for a more honest politics, but then also pave the way for the Tory party to be back in the way that I can actually respect it, even though I still wouldn't vote for them. I'm one of those that wouldn't vote for the Tories, even if they were back to the elder statesmen, the John Majors and stuff. Obviously John Major had his problems, but as
yes, I know.
If you saw him talk about Brexit, the John Major panel discussion, one-man panel discussion, that kind of Tory party could be very
school. You might not have agreed with them, but you did believe them when they told you what they stood for, and it didn't involve lazy populism. How significant was putting Braverman back in the Home Office? Because at the time I was guarding against saying it's game over now. On day one, all hopes that he was going to tack away from the horrors that had gone before, they all disappeared when he put Braverman back in the Home Office. I think now I wouldn't be cautious about that conclusion.
I think that was in a long line of things, but it was really fumbling the ball on day one, wasn't it? It's a bit of a Hail Mary putting a new guy in so soon after putting someone else in, but you've asked for that Hail Mary pattern, fumbled it, and everything since it's never really picked up.
You allowed that back to the front and centre, and of course she did much more trouble in the Home Office than she ever could have done from the back benches. So it was an appalling move, both politically and in terms of competence. Thank you, Mark. I like this from Walter, who says, you missed out the phrase doyen of political polling when you were talking about Sir John Curtis. I will give you until after the news for a correction, otherwise I will reach out to Ofcom. But listen, I don't think you have to say it unless he's here. I think that's the law, is that if Professor Sir John Curtis is appearing on your programme, then you are required by Ofcom to say doyen of political polling. If you don't say that, you run the risk of getting taken unfair. But I'm with Walter, I am better safe than sorry. So I should earlier, when I referenced Professor Sir John Curtis at the University of Strathclyde describing the Conservatives' current situation as the worst in the history of UK political polling, I should of course have described him as the doyen of political polling. My apologies. Richard's in Bristol. Richard, how are you going to save the day?
Hi, good morning. Hope you're well. You've been talking about staggering majorities of 250, 350 seats.
340. Just looking at the latest model. Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Which is quite crazy. If we take the opinion polls as read.
Sure.
So I'm just wondering whether Richie's looking to claw back some votes desperately. Could he use the tack that is such an overwhelming majority going to be healthy for democracy?
I've already tried it. This is why the phrase supermajority has been nonsensically introduced into British public discourse.
Has mentioned it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
would it spook you? I'm intrigued by who this. I think we came up with the phrase last week, the spookable horses, which sounds like a rather good 1970s prog rock band. But who are the spookable horses? Who looks at the electoral landscape and thinks, I want Labour to win, but I'm worried they might be about to win by too much. I just don't know that voter exists in the kind of numbers that they need to exist for the policy, for the idea of attraction. You, honestly.
Well, they could use that as the fear factor. You know, it's a case of, you know, and we have seen it before with the Tories, where they say, I've been given the mandate to do, you know, to run the country, and therefore outcomes.
Therefore, I can do whatever I want. I can unlawfully prorogue Parliament and shut my own, cull my own. Yeah, but I don't think anyone really sees Keir Starmer as being poised to take advantage of a big majority by breaking parliamentary convention and arguably the law. But I don't know. I mean, what you relay, Richard, whether it's intentional or not, is the desperation with which or in which they are engulfed. Because you even sound as if it's, I don't know whether it'll work or not, but at least it's something. We've got to put someone on the pitch, haven't we? We've got to put a team out on Saturday. We can't just sort of send out the cleaner. We've got to have a team. Well, actually, the cleaner's all we've got, Gaffer. We're going to have to play the cleaner up front. Everyone else has legged it. Everyone else is off sick. Everyone else is in bed. Everyone else is home. We've got to put a team on the pitch. You know you're going to get thumped. That's what we've just had an hour as an exercise. And what team are you going to put on the pitch? And the answer is, well, I don't know. Try that. Try this. Try the other. Try the opposite. Try the cleaner. How? Is the next 2.5 weeks going to play out, do you think? Well, we are, of course, about to find out. I am going to remind you in the next hour of the importance of voting and actually give you a little bit of help if you haven't registered in working out what you need to do.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 11 o'clock, Labour has suggested it would try to improve elements of the UK's trade deal with the EU. Rachel Reeves, who is meeting business leaders this morning, could seek closer alignment in some sectors to boost investment. The party is also under pressure to scrap the two-child benefit limit. Labour's Jonathan Ashworth has told LBC there won't be any commitments that can't be funded.
We will not make commitments that are unaffordable. We've seen what happened when Liz Truss and the Conservatives did that. People pay more on their mortgage. We will have a child poverty strategy in place, but also, in order to relieve hardship and lift people out of poverty, people need good, well-paid jobs, and that's what we're talking about today.
The Conservatives have renewed their warnings about Labour's tax plans and the potential for a large majority. Reform UK's Nigel Farage will set out his party's manifesto, called A Contract with the People, in Wales later. The Lib Dems want to extend fuel duty relief to more rural areas, and the SNP's John Swinney has been speaking ahead of his party's manifesto launch later this week.
The manifesto will be the alternative for Scotland. A very different manifesto, a very different prospectus of what Scotland should be considering at this election. A manifesto which is about ending austerity, ending Brexit, and establishing Scotland as an independent country.
A 29-year-old man has been jailed for at least 22 years for murdering a retired teacher. Paul McNaughton killed Peter Caution in a flat in Leith in August 2022. He'd lured the 75-year-old to the flat using a fake profile on a dating app. The Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has dissolved his 6-member war cabinet. He's now expected to hold consultations on the war in Gaza with a smaller group of government ministers. It follows the resignation of centrist Benny Gantz a week ago. And Global has announced its biggest ever plans for general election coverage. Nick Ferrari will host 2 exclusive phone-ins with Sir Keir Starmer and Rishi Sunak this week. And LBC and the Newsagents podcast will partner on election night itself for a 7-hour show, Britain Decides, led by Andrew Marr and Sheila Fogarty. Full details at lbc.co.uk. In the city, the FTSE 100 a short time ago was down 3 at 81.43. The pound buys $1.26 and the euro 18. LBC weather, most places dry with sunny spells, showers, some of them quite heavy in eastern and northeastern parts of the UK, a high of 22 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Thomas Watt.
Welcome back to Lunchtime Plays of the Week, brought to you by the Subway Rewards app, giving you 50% off the footlong of your choice every week until the 30th of June. And now to the plays. On Monday, the new All-Star Chicken took to the stage. On Tuesday, the All-Star Chimichurri Steak made some herbaceous moves. And Subway can't stop scoring lunchtime winners. So download the app, get 50% off your favourite footlong, and make it the footlongest summer ever. Subway, eat fresh, at participating
change of pace now, and indeed a change of tone. We move from the theoretical and perhaps even the fanciful into the grim and factful. An extraordinary piece of journalism undertaken by The Guardian, looking at the impact that poverty in particular has had and is having on schools and GPs. They are, it was reported, informally acting as emergency food providers, welfare advisors, housing officers, and social workers. So teachers and GPs and workers in schools and surgeries devoting more and more time and resources to support struggling parents and children. Now, I've got, obviously, a deep need for your help with this, because you know that this is true, because you're in it. Ideally, from that point of being the GP or the teacher. And I just want you to tell me. I've got another question for you in a minute, which is a bit odd, actually, and a bit embarrassing, but I think it's probably quite an important one. But we will begin in a moment with you just telling me about what you have had to do to address the youth hardship or to address the family difficulties that really have nothing to do with your job formally. It is not the job of teachers, for example, to feed children. It's the Joseph Rowntree Foundation, forgive me, that has done this study. It's reported in The Guardian today. And the words here from a deputy head at a school in Bristol, well, they just make you think that we're living in the 19th century, not the 21st. He says, you feed them, let's talk about pupils, you feed them, you clothe them, you tell parents where to go if they're homeless. It's literally everything. It's not even about teaching or learning, it's about keeping them fed, keeping a roof over their head. And that is, I find, well, I'll get onto the embarrassing question in a minute. Primary school staff estimated that 48% of their pupils, primary care staff said 57% of their patients had experienced hardship at some point since the start of the school year or over the past 12 months. Just sit down for a minute and listen to this. A third of schools and nearly half of GP surgeries had set up food banks to provide emergency supplies to hungry pupils and families. You go into the most deprived areas and staff in schools there estimate that 44% of pupils have come to school hungry at some point over the past year. It's 2024. We keep hearing that we're the 5th or 6th biggest economy in the world. Something profoundly wrong with the way our society is ordered. Nearly a quarter of NHS primary care staff and 40% of teachers said they had dipped into their own pockets to help pupils and patients. A nurse gave some underpants still in their packet that she'd bought for her husband to a desperate patient. GPs said penniless patients were missing treatment because they can't afford to travel for hospital visits or afford prescription charges. And of course, the scarcity of health centre appointment slots were being taken up by staff signing forms for patients, benefits forms for patients, writing letters to stop them getting evicted or referring them to food banks. I guess the phrase is firefighting, isn't it? The phrase is firefighting. So you work in healthcare, social care or education, right? I just want you to tell the rest of us what's happening. And remember, it may be second nature to you. You may know about this, but I think we need to hear it from various horses' mouths. I really want to hear about the simple things you do in order to quote this deputy head in Bristol, in order to feed them, clothe them, and help them know where to go when they're homeless. 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. The second question is one that you do not need to have a personal investment in these issues to answer. You don't have to have personal experience of firefighting, feeding children, putting your hand into your own pocket to help somebody desperate is what's happened. And by that I want detail. I want explanation, not broad brushstroke, but specific policy-based explanation on what has happened to make this situation so much worse than it was, say, 14 years ago. What are the key political decisions that have driven this decline? All right, 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. So the first question is, what have you done? And the second question, in a way, is what have we done as a nation? All right, you hit those numbers now, you will get through. Teachers, I can just about get my head around, but GPs, and that's where the embarrassing question comes in. It's not that I find this difficult to believe. It's just that it feels like it's happening somewhere. It feels alien to my experiences in my life. We've done a lot in this program over the years about poverty. I've spoken to people on air and off air who've been in desperate situations. But I've always thought of them as being individuals who've slipped through the safety net. I've always thought of them as being extraordinary examples of the system failing. What we're addressing today is the notion of ordinary examples of the system failing. These people being... Which callers do you remember from the years that we've spent together? I always remember, I don't know why some stick out more than others. I always remember the wife of a teacher in Norfolk, I think it was in Cromer, who talked to us about outside codes and inside codes. Do you remember that call? I think perhaps because her husband was a trainee teacher and working in a school, I just thought that level of poverty doesn't happen to people in that section of society. But they simply couldn't turn the heating on at the height of the fuel crisis. They simply couldn't afford to turn the heating on. They knew if they did, they would not be able to pay the bill at the end of the month. And so they wore coats inside. But that meant that the coat wouldn't work when they went outside. It wouldn't provide any protection against it being even colder outside. So they had outside coats. Another coat that you put on when you're heading outside. And that is what I mean when I draw a distinction between an extraordinary example and an ordinary example. And that's my third question, is how has this gone unrecognised for so long? Why, and I'll use myself as an example, why don't I realise, or no, why don't I fully appreciate the extent of these problems that are now being reported by school teachers and by GPs? It's 11 minutes after 11. I don't think idiots corner necessarily, but possibly. So, hi James, how gullible are you? Scum parents choosing to let others feed their kids. If GPs and schools advertise food banks, then feral families will take advantage. I've literally just told you about the family of a teacher that couldn't afford to heat their home. That's so. Got two ways to avoid the reality that I'm describing. One is to pretend that it doesn't exist, or to try to convince yourself, like our friend here, or to try to convince ourselves that it doesn't exist, that everybody in need is lying, everybody in need is dishonest, everyone in need is lazy. That's a very traditionally a certain type of tabloid Tory line. There's no such thing as poverty until people start complaining about possibly not being able to afford their school fees when Labour bring in VAT, and then poverty is suddenly real. I'm joking, but you know what I'm talking about. And that's where you come out with absolute nonsense, like if you can't afford to have children, then you shouldn't have them. What if we've created a society where hardly anybody can afford to have children under your reading of it? Then I'll tell you what, we're going to need a hell of a lot of immigration, and soon. So that I get that almost sort of self-protective urge to convince yourself that this is not a societal problem. Because if it's a societal problem, then we're part of it. And that's where the second form of denial comes in, which is a form of looking the other way, or just believing that these examples are exceptional. And I'm guilty of them. Even as I read these numbers, I'm thinking to myself, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. Because I don't want acidic ones. God, I believe this, God, I don't want to think about it. And then activate ones. They're all lies, they're all frauds. So, what have you done in your school or in your GP surgery or in your social care workplace? What have you done to just help someone? And it's a story that, now that you come to think of it, the rest of us will actually be surprised or shocked. What have you done to help a pupil, to help a parent, and to help a patient in a way that should simply not have fallen to you in the 21st century? 0345 6060 973 is the number that you need. What have you done? And then, how has this happened? And the final question, which you may not want to wrestle with today, but I want to put it out there. The final question is, why is this not front page news every day? How much of that is our fault? Why do we let this happen in the shadows, even as the problems become self-evident? Right? 0345 6060 973. So I do need your help with this one. I've pretty much said everything I've got to say. Question number one is one that I categorically can't answer because I'm not in any of these professions. So what have you done to help a pupil, a parent, or a patient in the context of poverty? 0345 6060 973. How have we fallen so far in just 14 years? These problems existed, but not on anything like the scale they exist now. Just look at the proliferation of food banks. And then the psychological question, the sort of social psychological question, which is, how does it stay so secret? Alright? Hit the numbers now, we'll get through to level 16.
LBC. Big news! The Skoda Big Launch event is here from the 20th to the 24th of June, and it's gonna be big. A big fanfare and the big unveiling of our new 2024 lineup. Big oohs and big ahs, with the all-new 7-seat Skoda Kodiaq that's big on space, and the all-new Skoda Superb that's big on luxury. Jump in at your local retailer for some big fun with a chance to win big prizes. A big family weekend away, British Grand Prix tickets, VIP Carfest day tickets, and more. The Skoda Big Launch event. UK 18 plus to enter, find and scan hidden QR code and showroom. Complete form between 20th and 24th of June. 1 entry per person, £500 at random. See website for price details and T's and C's.
I'm Susan Tanner from the Darwood and Tanner Dental Practice, a specialist in prosthodontics. I love working with dental implants to help patients with missing teeth regain their smile and their confidence. If you're choosing dental implants, our team are the experts who will be by your side for the whole journey.
From gum care to dental implants, Darwood and Tanner, celebrating 30 years at the forefront of world-class dentistry.
To find out more and meet our team, start at darwoodandtanner.co.uk.
Oh, that'll be the one in group chat. Colin smashes 5k. Gina's jogging up some mountain in Portugal, and I've just bought a new couch. Update, Gina's made it to the top, and she has a new blister. Surely, soon this is costing her a fortune.
Actually, Cam, it isn't. Here at Tesco Mobile, we've made sure she has no EU roaming fees this year.
Sign me up.
It pays to be connected. Tesco Mobile, every little helps. Terms apply. See tescomobile.com/home.
James O'Brien on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
It is 18 minutes after 11. Schools and GPs are struggling to cope with levels of youth hardship, and yet the rest of us know almost nothing about it. I want to answer both of those questions, but what is that struggle? What have you done? What do you do to help a pupil, a parent, a patient? And why do the rest of us not know more and possibly even care more? Brian's in Manchester. Brian, what would you like to say?
Hi James, great to speak to you. I retired during the COVID sort of thing, and I got a bit fed up, and I do volunteer work. I deliver sort of end-of-life medicine for a pharmacy and whatever, and to the NHS.
Yeah.
Into some sort of deprived or needy areas of Manchester and whatever.
Yes.
And over those few years I've been working, I've come across a number of patients who need so much help. I mean, personally, I'm not a rich man, but I'm okay. I'm retired, and
for someone to talk about.
She had absolutely.
How does that happen? Do you know how that happens? I mean, I don't want to sound naive, but if I'm naive, I'm naive. I'll take my medicine. You presume that the safety net is big enough to catch those kind of cases.
It's family. These people are often estranged from family for a reason. I mean, the person I was talking about on the pastor, their family have moved back to their original country, Ireland. So she's left, 70-odd-year-old lady, vulnerable, and she's got literally nobody. She's living.
But she gets a pension. She gets a pension and stuff. There's a few quid coming in. It's just not. It's just not.
It's just not enough.
This is part of the problem, isn't it? The comprehension problem. In that if you weren't there, seeing it with your own eyes, you'd think it was anomalous. You'd think that this is an exception. What I'm struck by this morning is what I once would have called extraordinary circumstances becoming increasingly ordinary circumstances.
Yeah, and there's other issues as well. And this is not to decry the NHS or whatever. But people who need to get, I've helped. I'm not saying this for anyone to give me a pat on the back. I'm just saying the situation is I've seen people elderly who need to get to hospitals for hospital appointments, and the NHS doesn't have they're so stretched that they can't provide an ambulance or a taxi or whatever. So in my spare time, I take them to but I've got the time to do that.
And if you weren't there, they would simply not be seen.
They would either not be seen or they would have to wait until this thing is, the transport is available to them, and that might be weeks or whatever, and it might be for it might be for a scan for something. These are elderly and vulnerable people who invariably do have conditions that need looking at quite stressful. So, but this is just the norm. I've only been doing it a few years, but it's profoundly shocked me to see the actual depth of the need and the need for. I mean, the system's being held together by people sort of going out of their way to
above and beyond, either in a volunteer capacity or just doing things that are simply not part of their job description, which would fit you. And you're working in the private sector effectively. You're not public servant. You're not working in.
I'm a volunteer actually. I'm a volunteer, but if you come across people like that, I mean, and I'm retirement age and whatever, you can't turn away from them, can you? You just can't. If I'm just going to go home and spend 2 hours on my garden, and this is and I'm not alone. I know other practices that do the same thing and whatever, because if they did, these people, I don't know where these people would get the help from, and some of them would, I know you're
not after compliments, but you're a lovely man, and you focus the mind as well on the final question, which I'd ask you. You may not have an answer to it. Why does all this stuff stay in the shadows? Even on a day like today, you kind of know we're going to have this conversation, and then at 12 o'clock we're going to talk about something else. There's no topic under the sun that we can talk about for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. But why does the Joseph Rowntree Foundation have to blow the whistle on things that are happening under so many noses every day? What's the sort of? It's almost like a societal conspiracy of silence. Where does that come from?
I'm not sure it's a conspiracy. I think it just becomes what you're doing. I first started out just delivering medicines to people, but then it becomes the norm.
Yeah.
Just in the way it's become the norm for a teacher to now be serving breakfast and being a social worker and acting as a mental health intermediary. I think it's just become the norm, and we just get on with it. Because what?
So you're a boiled frog then?
Well, you've obviously seen my photographs. Yes,
No, what I mean is that I'm sitting here going, oh my God, and you're actually going, well, that's just Monday. That's just what happened. So there's a massive disconnect between the people living it.
You become sort of numb to it. In many ways, you're not looking out for it and you're expecting it. I'm not saying it's the norm across all. I mean, this is for a minority of
it's still a minority, but you're looking at
2,000 patients. 2% it's a big old number.
Yes, it is, and in some areas the numbers are much higher. A third of schools, half of GP surgery is setting up food banks, which is part of the same project, isn't it? Is helping people get stuff that they need and can't get or haven't got. Thank you, Brian. It's the safety net, isn't it? We're talking about the consequences of not having one anymore, or at least having one that is threadbare and full of holes. And that's why the second question was, how has this happened? I suppose austerity is going to be a huge part of it. A huge part of it. Because that, of course, sees people like teachers and police officers, never mind pharmacy volunteers, doing things that would once have been done by others, but they're not there anymore. I don't know. 25 after 11 is the time. The teacher who has to feed the child. I want to hear from you as well. 03456060973, because Brian nailed something there. You think, I'm not reading James, it's just normal. You won't be interested in my story, but